Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beneath Vancouver Radio. This is episode number 55. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful day, night, evening, whenever you're listening to and wherever you're listening to. I know the podcast is getting a lot of listeners outside of Vancouver and outside of Canada. So, big shout out to anyone who's outside of those regions. So, welcome. And today's special guest that I have for episode 55 is Alynna. Alynna, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, enjoying my Friday. Can't complain. No complaints at all so far. But I'm going to just kind of jump right into it. I know for a couple of the other episodes, there was a lot of ramble at the beginning and stuff like that. So I'm going to be concise. I'm going to be short and sweet. And I'm just going to kind of let you explain as well who it is you are and what you do. So I'm going to hit you with the first question. Who are you today?
That's a good question. But first, thank you for having me. This is very exciting, and I can't wait to be a part of your podcast.
Thank you for
Who am I
coming.
Yeah, of course. Who am I today? So that's a great question. I like to think of myself kind of like a multidisciplinary designer at heart, really, because I feel that I'm kind of like a mix of different things in terms of designer. Um, and sometimes I also kind of just change like my label strategically depending on who I'm talking to and things like that. And I also like to experiment with design stuff. But currently I am a brand and web designer for a little tiny but mighty creative studio that I own called Alley Creative Co. Specifically, I work with service-based entrepreneurs on their individual branding and website design.
Okay.
And primarily, I like to focus on really just giving them a chance to embrace their individuality rather than going for, templates on Canva or like Squarespace templates. I really like to hone in on the purpose. Yeah, rather than like DIYing it. You want to look more confident as an entrepreneur. So
For sure.
that is what I do.
I like it. And then I like how you mentioned as well, multidisciplinary, which I can totally relate to that in particular. I'm not a web designer or a designer at all personally, but I came from a kinesiology background, and that's what I studied in school. And now I have my own podcast. I'm talking with people. I do marketing. That's my full-time gig. So I like to consider myself somewhat multidisciplinary as well. So I can definitely relate to that. So that actually brings me to the next question that I have here is kind of like your background and your origin story when it comes to getting involved in this space, because I know for a lot of people, the way that they get involved in this particular space, especially quote unquote as an entrepreneur or freelancer, however you want to call it, is mostly through like boot camps or like courses. And I've heard some people as well, like from SFU, like the SciAP program is pretty good over there. But I come from UBC, and for a lot of the individuals and friends that I'm aware of, they study like cognitive science and cogs and other stuff like that. So why don't you share a little bit about your story and kind of how you landed to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I have a BCIT background, so I graduated from the design and
Or
development.
BCIT, yeah.
Exactly. Digital design and development program. So it's a 2-year program. And I feel that, if you want to get into kind of the entrepreneurial design route, like that is definitely the program to go to because not only is it very hands-on and it's not super theory-based, there is some theory in terms of marketing yourself or marketing an app or a product. And also on top of that, obviously the necessary technical skills like in design and also in development as well. So it really gives you a good grasp of everything. And that's kind of what attracted me to the program is because growing up, I've always been a creative person. I self-taught myself how to use Photoshop when I was like 12. I don't know if you know Pixo, but it was like kind of like a very easy
Yeah.
like, website designer thing. So I used to do that back in elementary school and kind of
Okay.
learned into it all on my own. So that's basically my background, and that's what attracted me to the program. And then following that, I ended up getting a full-time digital designer position at a marketing agency down in Vancouver. So I was doing that straight off of BCIT, and I don't know if you're familiar with BCIT, but it has like 10 courses each
Yeah, it's
semester.
extensive,
Really,
very
yeah,
intense.
really intense. But I loved it. It was a lot of fun, and because of that, I was able to really kind of decide which path I want to go to because I had so many different experiences with design development and marketing as well. Um,
Right.
and even with my marketing agency role, I really was the main designer and developer. So I was doing graphic design things, video editing sometimes as well, and animation, and of course, websites. So I really got a good grasp of literally everything. So that's
Mhm.
why I kind of said in the beginning I was a little bit of a multidisciplinary at heart. But yeah,
No,
that's
that's a great answer. And yeah, I think as well, the ability to, at least from the BCIT side of things, I know for sure that it's a lot more kind of hands-on and intensive, as well as you mentioned 10 courses. And I'm happy to hear that you're able to land something right away.
Mhm.
What would you kind of recommend? I know we're potentially jumping the gun a little bit, but what would you recommend to someone like as yourself who growing up has been surrounded by like this creative work and stuff like that? So whether it be websites or like
Mhm.
photography or something along those lines, what would you say? Would you think that like still going again, I use this very loosely, traditional quote unquote route of going to school, getting a degree, or something like, for example, taking courses at a different institution, such as like a brain station, or I don't even
Mhm.
know what other institutions are available. Because that always seems to be kind of that awkward, or not awkward, but like kind of fork in the road where people are very interested in a certain skill set. I'm going to use UI UX as in web design as that,
Mhm.
just because I feel like that's starting to become more and more popular.
Mhm.
Um, and people kind of say like, do I go to school? I really want to do this, and I know that that's kind of like my end goal, my ultimate career path. Or do I just kind of take the leap of faith and try to continue learning on the side and kind of try to get clients to build my portfolio? What would you
Mhm.
recommend to someone who's maybe a couple of years younger than you, who's about to maybe just make that decision in life?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Personally, I nowadays, especially in 2021, I don't think it's necessary
Hmm.
to really have this big educational background.
Hmm.
If you are kind of like me when I was first starting out, who was kind of unsure of what I wanted to do specifically in terms of, something creative or in marketing or things like that,
Right.
I don't think it's necessary to really go and have a formal educational background. I know a lot of people who I went to BCIT with, they had these diplomas, these fancy diplomas from UBCs that they ended up not really using because they learned something else or something else later on. Right? Exactly, like you with your kinesiology degree. Um, but yeah, so honestly, I would say like personally, I would take the gap year for high school after high school and kind of just decide what I want. Especially, I don't know about you, but in an Asian background like myself, you kind of get that pressure from your parents, maybe perhaps, or
Yeah.
everybody else around you to like, oh, you have to get into a fancy university. But personally, I don't think that's the case. I think it might be better off, especially now, maybe take some tiny courses online, or not even courses, but there's so much resource online that's free. So if you want to, you know, learn from YouTube even, or try
Hmm.
something small like that first to start with, rather than committing in like a 4-year program. Personally, I think that would be more worth it in the end, really just to try things out.
Yeah. No, for sure. I can relate 100%. I agree 100% as well. I think for me personally, it wasn't so much the pressure, at least it wasn't directly like from my parents, but it was from my older brother, 4 years older. He went to
Mhm.
UBC as well. He studied chemistry. So he's very, very book smart. Shout out to him. I don't actually know if he listens to my podcast or not, actually. But if you are, that's your shout out. But yeah, so for me, like the pressure was to kind of um, again deliver to that standard, I guess, that he had set.
Mhm.
And so I actually, funny enough, went to UBC for political science my first 2 years.
Mhm.
And at first, I wanted to become either a lawyer or work in the government in some capacity. And it wasn't until like my first 2 years where I realized, you know what, this is definitely not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like kind of in an identity crisis, and I was like not
Mhm.
too sure what I wanted to do. And I told my parents, like, hey, there's this degree, like it's called kinesiology. And I remember the first reaction was like, what's that? Like, they don't know, right?
Yeah.
Their background and their generation is more like, you either become like a scientist, a doctor, a lawyer, or, something along those lines. It's,
Mhm.
cozy, comfy paying jobs, right? And so when I told him like I'm taking this degree that you've probably never heard of, it definitely was a little bit of a convincing to be done to get them to kind of jump on board with me. But
Mhm.
I mean, here we are like 3 years later, not even using the degree, and they've come to understand now kind of how the world is. And I'm not sure if
Mhm.
you've heard about this, but like kind of the economy that we're going into is more of like a gig economy or like a
Oh yeah.
contractor economy. So a lot of people like freelancers, entrepreneurs are making, good money and sustaining themselves
Mhm.
and or family through, their own clients or their own kind of line of work. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely interesting times that we live in, especially with everything going digital and stuff like that. Everyone needs a
Mhm.
website, everyone needs a social
Yeah.
presence if you're trying to sell products, etc., services online. So
Mhm.
The possibilities are endless, I guess, is what we're trying to say, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the pandemic. I feel that there has so many businesses that have popped up
Yeah.
during the pandemic, myself included. So yeah, I definitely agree with you that I think formal education isn't really the way to go. Whereas before it was the one and only way, but now there's so many different routes that you can take. Some people are self-taught, and things like that. There's so many resources now. So
For sure. And let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about kind of the creation of, Ally Creative Code during the pandemic. What was that? What was your experience? I mean, we're still living in it so far, a year and a half almost now later from the beginning of it. But, obviously a lot has changed within that timeline. What was kind of your output so far in the last, year and a half, especially when it comes to starting your own business?
yeah, so it was kind of by accident how I started.
Okay.
If you had told me in early 2020 that I was gonna start my own design studio, I would have laughed in your face because I always thought of myself kind of as an employer rather than an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Though I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, I just never really knew much about entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
So then, obviously, after looking online in the pandemic, you have so much time to yourself. I was traveling, and thankfully before the pandemic hit, so I was able to do my traveling.
Hmm.
And then I come back, and then I was supposed to look for jobs and things like that for my next full-time role, but everybody was getting laid off at the time, so it
Yeah.
wasn't really, a part for me for that. So obviously I was kind of bored, and I started my own Instagram account for my design work, just kind of something to do, like a little hobby while I'm kind of in a limbo of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then when I was on Instagram, I just followed a couple of design accounts and things like that, and then I really got inspired by a lot of these entrepreneur design ladies specifically. So I wanted to do that. I was like, hey, like I can design websites. I've designed websites before. I can do graphic design. I can do branding design. Why not just try it out?
Right.
And I also had a couple friends who was actually asking me for some freelance design help. So that kind of started the whole taking in clients things for myself rather than for an agency.
Hmm.
But thankfully, with my agency background, it was such a small company that I learned a lot in terms of the business side of things, in terms of pricing, getting clients and things like that. So
Yeah.
it really helped me, in my opinion, kind of get a head start on my little creative studio. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Nice. And kind of, I guess, the follow-up question to that is, in terms of, and you brought it up as well, like the projects and the project rates and stuff like that.
Mhm.
For someone like yourself who's, venturing into this kind of new I was going to say venturing into a new venture, but I don't want to repeat myself. And now that I say it, it sounds weird.
That makes
Venturing
sense.
into this new unknown,
Yeah.
new territory.
Yeah.
What was kind of like the mindset? And you mentioned it a little bit and touched upon it, like switching your mindset from employee to entrepreneur. What was
Mhm.
kind of in what particular moment or moments led to that shift in itself? Because I know for a lot of people, especially right now who are listening, like the demographic is younger, around 18, young adults to, mid 20s, and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That's like the peak audience of this podcast, and arguably the
Okay.
people who I would say right now are in very interesting points in their life. They're either
Mhm.
just wrapping up high school, about to enter university, post-secondary if they decide to do that, or are in post-secondary, about to graduate, or have just graduated and entered probably the
Mhm.
workforce, or stuff like that. So again, three unique but very interesting points in people's lives. What was kind of the shift for you to kind of say to yourself, you know what, I have these skill sets. I know what I'm doing, for a lack
Mhm.
of a better word. I have the talent. I know I do. What kind of pushed you to actually create the business? I know you said a little bit by mistake and stuff like that, but was there
Mhm.
kind of like what moment was the mindset shift there?
Yeah, so mindset is a whole different ballgame when it comes to
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. And it's still something that I'm working on, to be honest. Like, I feel
Hmm.
that it's not something that you just learn and kind of get right away. It's definitely a process.
Right.
Um, but what made the switch was honestly, it was kind of just like I'm sick of kind of being treated like a freelancer because
Hmm.
freelancer and owning your own studio is very different things. And I also took part in the community where I listened to a couple of virtual summits and things like that. And it really got me inspired. And that really helped change my way of thinking in
Hmm.
terms of my mindset and also self-worth. Self-worth is a whole different ballgame in terms of on a designer's point of view, anyways, because a lot of, I don't want to ramble about it, but a lot of designers,
Go
when
ahead.
starting out, they often, not really know their self-worth, and they often charge at lower prices than how much it actually would be.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those wages aren't livable wages, so that, like, those things like that, I kind of like built up, and I was like, okay, like, I need to actually start taking myself seriously. I need to know my self-worth. And a lot of that is really just mindset that's
Mm-hmm.
blocking you, and mindset that's also will help you in the long run anyways. So just figuring the problem in terms of your mindset, and then like what you envision later on really helps, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. And any kind of like, I guess, whether it be role models or resources within
Mm-hmm.
that space that kind of help you to understand those certain things. I know in your case, for example, you had a lot of exposure on the business side of things through your agency job and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
you kind of had, the one up, so to speak. But for others that might be, just still in within their little bubble or wanting to kind of take that extra step, any resources or any recommendations that you'd be like, if you're wanting to understand more about project rates or wanting to understand how to actually, get clients consistently,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that's helped you with along in your journey so far?
Yeah, so a really good one, I'm sure you've probably heard of, a lot of people have heard of him, but Chris Do from
Christo.
The
Yes, I
Future.
was
Yeah,
hoping
we
you were going to
love
say
him.
that. Yeah.
Yes, especially his little lecture on pricing yourself.
The
That one
Nike
was,
logo one.
yes, that one,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, that one was just
Okay.
amazing. So that's the first thing that I always recommend
That's
to
the vibe
people.
check for the podcast. If you know Christo.
Yes, shout out Chris Do. Yes, just like really, like I said earlier, there's a lot of resources out there. Go to virtual summits; they're free. There's a lot of really resourceful information in there that
Mhm.
is literally super valuable for years to come. And on top of that, of virtual summits, you meet all of these people, and you kind of restock them a little bit by going through their blogs and things. But reading their blogs is very valuable as well, because you learn so much from them. And all
Right.
of these things that I'm mentioning, all for free as well. You don't have to pay for them.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not in a position right now. I've still been looking for investments in terms of personal development, whether that's like coaching or group coaching sessions and things like
Mhm.
that. I'm kind of still in the middle of figuring which one I should invest my money in, but
Yeah, of
if you have
course.
the means to kind of try that out, I definitely recommend that as well. And even just mentoring, I had a mentor earlier. So mentoring is also another big recommendation that I would do.
Yeah. No, for sure. Speaking to people that have been through, the path already, right? And have gone
Mhm.
through it in their shoes, right? And I think as well from that, it's a lot easier, at least for me, I don't know about you, to speak to someone, whether it be like in a Zoom call or a coffee chat and stuff like that, and actually be able to pick, their brain instead of potentially maybe just hearing the same, again, quote unquote lecture.
Mhm.
For some time, for some certain content, maybe it's good, but to actually get, good anecdotal kind of references or evidence of like saying like, this is kind of my experience. I would actually recommend you do that or try that out. So mentorship is a huge component, and as well, just being able to network is so
Yeah.
crucial. And I obviously right now it's a little bit harder due to the pandemic and, not a lot of events going on, if any. So
Mhm.
one little resource, and I'm sure I've mentioned it a couple times in the podcast, but for anyone who's interested in networking, I recommend you check out Lunch Club. I don't know if you've heard of it or
Ooh,
not.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, Lunch Club, great free resource. You sign up for a time, the algorithm does its work, and it tags you with someone that has, or pairs you, I should say, with someone who has similar interests and stuff like that. So if you're wanting to expand your network in a relatively, obviously safe manner, at least right now during the pandemic,
Mhm.
Lunch Club for sure for anyone out there. I'm sure you can find some good gems in terms of people to chat with. So
Mhm.
no, that's good. And I guess like for you personally, what's been kind of the biggest, I know you probably get this question a lot, or a lot of people sometimes ask you this, but it's a staple when it comes to obviously this podcast is like, what's been the biggest obstacle so far for you personally from a, like either a business standpoint or a personal standpoint when it comes to kind of shifting again, your mindset and kind of shifting your goals, right? And kind of who you are as a person.
That's a good question. I think for me right now, anyways, accountability.
Hmm.
Being an entrepreneur, especially on your own, you're just on your own. You don't really have anybody to bounce ideas with and things like that. I'm sure you can have like a coach that can kind of help with that accountability. Um, but I think that is my biggest obstacle right now. And I also am the type of person who have a lot of ideas, and I kind of want to implement them and things like that. But I think I just really need structure in terms of prioritizing things. Like I'm
Right.
pretty good at it already, I think, anyways, but I think I definitely could use some improvement in that and really figuring things out, like which one I really should hone in on for the time being before I kind of move on to like the other exciting thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you a like physical writing down or like more of a digital person when it comes to like your notes and, to-do lists and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm a bit of both. I use Asana for all of my project
Mm.
management. And I've recently dived into Notion. I know that's kind of the big,
Yes.
thing right now,
Yeah.
which I'm really liking Notion. But I think when it comes to like my day-to-day to-do lists and things, I definitely like to write it down on a
Hmm.
planner. And yeah, I just like to write things down when it comes to day-to-day stuff. But in overall high-level structure of things, I definitely like to use digital.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's definitely a lot of different softwares out there. Asana is a great one. Notion's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
Trello,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Basecamp, I guess, kind of depending
Yeah.
on kind of what your needs are and stuff like that. So there's Airtable, Monday.com. There's
Mm-hmm.
a bunch, really.
So many
There's
analysis paralysis, am I right?
exactly. Now I'm probably gonna get targeted for a bunch of ads now and on YouTube and on my Instagram. But
On TikTok
yeah,
especially.
exactly. Oh, let's actually jump into that. TikTok. Have you used that platform in terms of like any like sharing? As
Mhm.
I've seen, I get a full transparency. I kind of gave it a shot. I don't. I'm more a consumer than a creator, at least on TikTok.
Mhm.
I gave it a shot last early summer, around
Okay.
May, June, July, for kind of hopping on like the trends and using the
Yeah.
music that was popular, but more of giving advice and kind of be for like creatives and content creators and podcasts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So for creatives in general, it was fun, but then I just kind of gave up just because, to be honest, there wasn't a huge traction, and
Oh,
I
really?
ran out of ideas.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't something that I enjoyed. I prefer more
Mhm.
long form for
You're
whatever
right.
reason, at least in the creative side of things.
Right.
Like YouTube videos, which obviously is still another dead thing on my end. I need to pick that up. But I mean,
Mhm.
this podcast is we were consistent on this, right? So
Yeah.
1 out of 3, we'll take that. But I'm
Yeah, your
curious to
time will come,
hear.
of course.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious to see if you have any experience with that in terms of setting your brand and who you are
Mhm.
on TikTok.
Yeah, so I'm not on TikTok. That's definitely on that has been on my list to like
Right.
start a TikTok like each month. Because I do know like how valuable TikTok is nowadays.
Hmm.
Like I don't know if you've heard of it, but Instagram's gonna be dead soon, so
Oh
everybody's
yeah. I mean, it's
TikTok.
already. I don't. I.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
Um,
different story.
and with their reels and stuff too, like you have to have reels in order to push your Instagram growth
Yeah, your
more.
algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah, so not yet, but that's been on my list. I do like what you said earlier though about being more of a consumer rather than a creator, because even with my Instagram, like I know how much benefits Instagram would have in terms of marketing your own studio and things like that.
Mhm.
But it's just draining to me personally.
Yeah.
I understand the importance of it, so I do it, but it's not something that I particularly enjoy. Like I don't really want to be an influencer or things like
Yeah.
that, which unfortunately a lot of other design studios are kind of becoming influencers, to be honest. I'm
Hmm.
more of a private person, so but either way, I still love it. I've met a lot of people online through Instagram. I love being a consumer on TikTok. Like it's takes me 2 hours before I go to sleep every night now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's me too. Next thing you know, I don't know about you, but sometimes, and I don't know what the minimum threshold is, but I sometimes get the dude from like the TikTok ad that's like, whoa,
Mhm.
whoa, whoa, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
guilty.
Yeah, I'm guilty too. I'm not too sure exactly how long that is, to be honest. It's got to
Yeah.
be at least an hour for sure, though. So I kind of feel bad sometimes, and then I'm like, oh shoot, it's already 1. I guess it's time to go to bed. But
Mhm.
yeah, no,
No.
it's such an interesting platform. Like
Mhm.
I'm gonna dive a little bit more. Is that okay with you? I'm gonna
Yeah,
dive a little bit
yeah,
more
go for
into
it.
it.
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Oh, I heard that.
Pardon everyone. There's a very loud, extremely loud plane right outside my house. Wow, that's a podcast first. I'll try to edit that out. If not, I'll keep it in there. But
I was just gonna say, perfect clip for TikTok, eh?
yeah, exactly, right there. That might be it. I'll have to take a
Yeah.
timestamp too. Okay, it's still 2:30. No, but what I was saying, oh shoot, I think I lost my train of thought. Shoot. No, right. What I was gonna say is that I first heard of TikTok actually in late 2019, around November.
Mhm.
I'm a big Gary V guy. I don't know how
Oh
you
yes.
feel about him.
Yeah.
Some people have mixed opinions, but he's actually the one of the reasons that I'm actually here right now, sitting
Oh,
in this chair
cool.
having this conversation with you. because of the book that I read, Crushing It. But anyways, that's a different story. This is not Aaron's episode.
Not a
I'm not
Gary
the
Vee
guest.
fangirling session.
Yeah, exactly. Funny enough, I'm actually, if the conference goes through, I'm going to see him in October for a
Oh,
conference. So
cool.
fingers crossed. But
Mhm.
anywho, I digress. So I saw it first in November, and at first I was like, so this is just another Vine, right? So I didn't really see much of the value to it. But then it wasn't until Gary Vee was just like, you should get on TikTok. It's going to blow up, yada, yada, yada. And my first, excuse me, my first video that I made with a buddy of mine was in February of 2020, right before COVID hit. And it didn't go viral by any means, but I think it peaked at like 70,000 views. And it was just a stupid trend of like running around the house of like, I'm not sure how early you were on TikTok, but essentially the trend was like you get greeted by a waiter or waitress, and they'd like run around the entire restaurant and then finally land at your seat after going through like the kitchen, the back valley, and stuff like that. And probably have no idea what I'm talking about if you've never watched the video, but anyway, so it blew up, or relatively blew up, or got a lot of views. And then that's when I tried to shift into the creative side of things and actually create content that's more like educational, because that's what I like to consume as well, like educational content, like stuff that will help me become a better, creator, a better person overall, etc. But I guess it was because I deleted the video that my algorithm got entirely screwed up, and I was like only averaging 100 views per video.
Got
So that was
shadow
kind of,
banned.
yeah, I got shadow banned. So
Yeah.
that's what I think so too. So I got a little demoralized, and but I'm curious to hear from your perspective, kind of shifting the side now to you. How do you see kind of like TikTok taking over? I know you kind of said obviously Instagram, and I see it too. It either needs to adjust accordingly or adjust like months ago. It's already behind in my opinion, but I think it's going to face a similar fate as Snapchat did when Instagram got stories out and stuff like that. So I'm curious as to how you feel about like the whole TikTok space, the future of it, and the platform overall.
I think honestly, TikTok is the way to go because I feel like, especially now after we've been kind of in the digital era for a little bit now,
Right.
Quick videos, everybody kind of has less attention spans. And I think, like we both mentioned earlier, you can get stuck in TikTok for hours because it's quick content. So I really think that is kind of the direction where social media is headed. Not only did Instagram copy them, I've also noticed, I don't know if you have, but Netflix also has like their own like kind of quick video swiping.
Netflix has like Reels now?
Yeah, Reels, but it's not really made by content creators per se. It's more like short clips from TV shows and
from the
movies.
shows. No, I haven't noticed that. I mean, everyone's, yeah. Now that you mention it,
YouTube
it's
as well,
like
right? So
everyone's got them now, like the shorts on YouTube.
exactly.
Yeah. No, that's true. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's saying that we are, as human
No.
being, as a society, cannot focus
Yeah, and I
for
kind
long.
of don't like that, like all these platforms, like for example, YouTube. I go to YouTube specifically for long form content. I don't really want to see the shorts on there because I have TikTok for that,
Yeah.
So I don't really like that fact how everybody is kind of leaning into this like one, short form content type of thing.
Yeah, and it's funny as well, like at least again from a more of a consumer perspective, at least on TikTok and also YouTube as well. Like it's almost like two different errands. Like the TikTok errand is always the I have time to, well, I mean, obviously technically on both ends, and if I'm consuming media, I'm burning time, but on a more of a TikTok side, it's like almost like it'll be quick. Like mentally, that's what I'm thinking. I'm only here for a couple of minutes. I'm either, waiting for the bus or whatever, or I'm about to go to bed, right? Supposedly at least. And next thing you know, it's like an hour and a half later, and I'm like, shoot, I got to get off this app. As for YouTube, like I'm going into a YouTube video, I know it's exactly going to be, X amount of minutes long. I'm going to watch this video and then I'm done, whether it be like my lunch break or I'm going to go back to work, or I'm going to watch another video. Because I know before TikTok, at least the way that I would kind of fall into the spiral would be like just clicking the recommended videos on YouTube and then just kind of go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But now the rabbit hole is TikTok. So I feel like that's switched, at least from my perspective. Now it's just scroll, swipe, 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 swipe.
Yeah,
it's easier. It's probably more convenient too, because it's on your phone as opposed to, YouTube you can watch on your phone obviously as well. But I prefer, especially if it's longer form content, to watch it on an iPad or a computer itself. So it's funny now that you kind of break it down, and I'm sure there's studies and scientists and all sort of stuff like that showing how bad really our attention is now. So
Yeah, the only thing I will say about TikTok, though, I know I was like saying earlier that, yeah, definitely like TikTok's kind of
Hmm.
where it's headed. The only con that I would say that I could think of right now, anyways, is the fact that you don't really have control over who sees your content. You
Right.
can have people who aren't really your target audience commenting and engaging with your content, but that could kind of
Yeah.
ruin your content in some way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
definitely probably some trolls there for sure. I mean, almost every platform, but I feel like now more than ever, TikTok's the
uh,
if you go viral and it's like, you're on people's For
mhm.
You page and stuff like that, the algorithm might pick it up and then you might just be like, what's this, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
there's definitely obviously pros and cons with every list, but
Hmm.
that's Aaron and Alynna's TikTok
Take
review. Thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
TikTok sponsor us.
Exactly. I mean, that'd be awesome. Anyways, I'm going to shift the conversation aside from social media and kind
Yeah.
of now go into what I think almost every, again, entrepreneur, creative goes through at some point in their life, probably multiple times. I know definitely I have. And this is what I like to call the creative blocks or the creative
Ooh,
slumps.
okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Obviously everyone's different. Everyone kind of passes those slumps differently. How do you kind of approach those slumps, or do you even notice that you're in those slumps? Because I know for me personally, sometimes I'll like feel a little bit down and then I'm like, so why can't I, write this blog, or why can't I
Mhm.
edit this podcast? Am I in
Mhm.
a creative slump? Right. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about your experience and kind of how you go around um, navigating those certain time frames.
Yeah, absolutely. Creative blocks are the worst, in my opinion, especially when you're in a creative field where
Yeah.
you have to be a professional and that's kind of what you do for a living.
Yeah,
So
that's your job.
any any blocks is kind of ruining your timelines and everything else that goes with that. But with that said, with creative blocks personally, what I like to do is really just rest, unwind, get offline,
Mhm.
stop working on the projects that I'm working on right now because no matter how many times I look at it, it's not going to be helpful. It's just going to be
Yeah.
wasted time, in my opinion. So I like to go on walks. I like to walk my dog sometimes. Really just get some fresh air, and I feel like having a change of scenery and working environment helps for me too. Sometimes I pick up my laptop, and thankfully now that indoor dining is available again, I can go to
Yeah.
coffee shops and work there. So yeah, just kind of a change in scenery, in my opinion, helps a lot.
Yeah. Environment 110%. That's been my biggest struggle personally.
Hmm.
Especially now that prior to, was it April and almost, yeah, April and pretty much all of May,
Yeah.
we had at least here in BC, we had indoor dining kind of restrictions. So
Hmm.
had to kind of navigate in other spaces and other co-working spaces and kind of see what was available because yeah, working from home remotely for over a year now has definitely taken a toll on
Yeah.
my mental health for sure. It's
Oh
getting a
yeah.
lot better now, and stuff like that. And I'm starting to kind of understand, also how I operate and being able to differentiate the play from the work. Because before I wasn't able to do that, right? The desks
Yeah.
that you're
Agreed.
seeing right now and that all the
Mhm.
viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, are seeing, which if you aren't, you should,
Yeah.
would be in this chair for like 14 hours of my 16
Mhm.
that I'm awake, right? So
Mhm.
it's definitely been a rather unique experience, one that hopefully never have to experience ever again.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
hear
everyone
you.
can relate to that and wishes for that as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, just being able to understand that I think is super important. And
Mhm.
for when you're walking and just kind of relaxing, are you kind of like a disconnect entirely, like not no music at all, or just kind of
Yeah. It really
bring some
depends.
Mhm.
Sometimes I like to put on a podcast and just
Right?
kind of get my brain kind of going again in that realm. But
Hmm.
sometimes I just, just some Hamilton soundtrack or something
Yeah.
like that. Just something completely like off the rails. Sometimes quiet is good too. It really just depends on how I'm feeling at the time. But
Oh,
sometimes I
that.
do like to kind of step away completely so then I can come back with a clearer mind because I feel that if your mind is already rambling a little bit, it's really not useful and it's better to have a break first.
Yeah, I know for sure. It's like you mentioned at the beginning where you're an individual that has like a bajillion ideas and your mind's going,
Hmm.
go, 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 go.
Yeah.
I can relate to, and it's kind of like
Hmm.
the fact that it's almost like you want to slow it down, but at the same time, like if you feel like you're slowing down, then you feel like you're limiting your creativity almost at some
Yeah.
sense. So it's like
Hmm.
a double-edged sword, really. So
Yeah.
it's
Totally.
yeah, everyone has their own kind of ways of dealing with that.
Mhm.
So that's good that you've got your own little structure and your own little schedules and walks and going out with your dog. It's always a nice way to de-stress. So we're nearing, unfortunately, the end of our episode. I still have two more questions before we kind of head out here. First question is, what would you kind of then recommend to, I'm going to rephrase this. What would you kind of say to someone if they come up to you, message you on Instagram or whatever, or reaches out after this podcast, which hopefully people do, and say like, I'm interested in website building, website design, but I have absolutely zero design background. What would you recommend for someone like that? So I know there's different options out there, but I'm curious to see if maybe that experience has happened in the past, and if so, kind of how you responded to that.
Yeah, so I do have kind of a lot of people around me reach out, and just especially because I was enrolled in the BCIT D3 program.
Right.
A lot of kind of newbies come in and ask, oh, how is the program like even if like I don't have a design background. Personally for me, I would just try it. It doesn't hurt to try. I actually don't know how to draw. Like I don't know how to draw, but I didn't let that get in the way of me becoming a designer, because I think knowing how to draw is a component to it, but it's not like a deal breaker. So honestly, I would just try it, go for it. In terms of website design, if you don't have the design eye for it, like you can still be a developer if you want to. You don't necessarily need to have the design eye for it. That's what designers are for. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to try. You might have this design eye that you don't even know about until you try it.
Yeah, no, you got to give it a shot. You don't know until you do it. I didn't know that I, would be doing a podcast until I gave it a shot. So,
yeah.
That's a very, it's always as well super critical sometimes. And you're yourself. You are your own, oh my gosh. You know what I'm trying to say? You are your own yourself's biggest.
Oh, your biggest enemy or
Yeah,
something?
or critic or something like that. I'm completely butchering that. My apologies, everyone. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is that like you're always gonna think that the work that you're putting out is not perfect, and that you're always, you can always make it better, and you're think going back to the drawing board, like, no, this is not good. This is not good. So it's a matter of just putting it out there, and also, as well as you mentioned, asking people who might be in that space for advice or questions, mentorship, and taking obviously that criticism, not personally, but as a way to like, this is going to push me to become a better version of myself, whether again it's a designer, developer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's super important. Final question here, nearing the end of the episode again, as you are well aware, and as everyone else is aware of what the question is that's coming up, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I actually love that question, because you mentioned earlier now that your target audience is really like a little bit more of the you're just starting on the careers.
Yeah.
So I think for me personally, we kind of touched up upon it a little bit, but one is just to be kinder to myself, and two, just knowing my self-worth. As a business owner, like I mentioned, especially a designer, it's hard to justify what you do sometimes with easy access to Canva and, Squarespace templates and things like that. So you really kind of devalue your self-worth sometimes in order to match other people's budgets, but even though it's kind of like an unlivable wage, like I said earlier. So definitely knowing your self-worth, knowing, that you are worth it to be priced high ticket. And you're going to do a good job out of it. So I think that is one piece of advice I would give to my younger self. And then in terms of being kinder to myself, I can be really hard on myself sometimes when, I have these ideas and I get into that creative block that we mentioned, and you get frustrated, and I get frustrated about it. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes as well. So I and I'm very passionate in what I do. I love what I do, and I love helping other people kind of get that, that online aesthetics with their branding and things like that. So I'm very passionate about it, but sometimes it can take a toll on my personal well-being when it doesn't go my way, or there's something that happens, and I'm very hard on myself when it comes to things like that. So just being kind to myself. And as well, I kind of worked on that by, there's this amazing nonprofit that I work for called Artists for Mental Health, and they did these like self-compassion series that I took a part in, and I felt that really helped me, because there are a lot of times we're always thinking about like the next project that you're working on, but you don't really take time to kind of do self-care, or really take time to kind of appreciate yourself.
Right.
And, you don't really notice all of these big, things that you've worked on because you're worried about the next thing.
Hmm.
So really just taking time to be kinder to myself and appreciating what I've done so far and, not be super stressed out and have an anxiety when nothing goes my way. So yeah.
No, that's wonderful. That's very good pieces of advice that I'm sure the listeners can relate to. And definitely, again, something that many other creators and creatives and entrepreneurs struggle with, right? And understanding your
Mhm.
self-worth and slowing down when you need to slow down, and kind of looking at the wins and everything that you've accomplished within your career and your journey, right, is also important. So, because we're always chasing that next step, right? You're always kind
Yeah.
of wanting to climb the ladder, but it's also
Mhm.
important to look down and see how far you've come. So,
Exactly.
very, very great advice for sure.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Where can people find your work? If they want to connect with
Mhm.
you, how can they do that? Please, this is your 30 seconds of plugs. Go.
Sounds good. So you can find me on Instagram, Ali Creative Co. I also have a website, alicreativeco.com, which is currently under construction, but I am in the middle of kind of revamping things and hopefully it'll be done by the end of the month. I
Excellent.
do have a personal kind of portfolio site. So if anybody who is a little bit more into kind of corporate, that's where I toss in a lot of my corporate work. So that's alynnaalcira.com. I can share that with you later as well if you want to, but it might be useful for some people who are in college and post-secondary. So
For sure. Yeah. I'll make sure to have all the links again in the podcast description. And if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the
yeah.
description down below. Thank you again, Alynna. I really do appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast having you here chatting a
Yeah.
little bit more about design work, TikTok, social
Yes.
media, entrepreneurship, all the wonderful things that we discuss on this podcast.
Mhm.
You've been wonderful. So thank you again. And thank you to all of our listeners as well for tuning in. This was once again episode number 55 for Beneath Vancouver
Oh,
Radio.
congrats.
We're almost, yeah, we're almost at 60.
Wow.
I think by the time you're listening to this, there'll probably be already a couple in the pipeline. So make sure to stay on the lookout for that. And if you haven't already and you're watching on YouTube, I'd greatly appreciate if you hit that like and subscribe button and comment down below if you enjoyed the episode, or if you have any recommendations for a local creative entrepreneur business owner here in Vancouver, because that's what we do. So once again, my name is Aaron, and thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Hi, thank you.
Bye.